Bonjour, bonsoir, et bonne nuit. If you just heard me, or if you've been following us, then you know that our typical introduction is good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. However, I switched it up, and that is a practical example of what we're going to be doing this episode.
N'importe quoi. Bonjour, bonsoir et bonne nuit. Welcome, bienvenue, hola, buenos días, buenas noches, buenos tardes.
Buenas tardes, buenas noches.
Sí, gracias y merci. And how you say welcome is, oh, look at you. Bien, yes. All of that. Welcome to yet another beautiful episode of Touching the Stove, the show where we start code switching randomly to prove a point. I am your code switching host, Amadou C. Today I have with me one of the best code switchers I know, the best to ever do it. Switch up a language on you like it's nothing. Buttery voice, golden personality, everybody's favorite go-getter, hustler, Desiree Anani.
Hello, everyone, and I hope that you are just as ecstatic as we are. This episode is not anything new to us. This is tried and true. We are not new to this. We live by it. We experience it, and we thought it very befitting to talk about. So, what is code switching?
Code switching is, I'm going to give y'all the colloquial version before we give you the professional one. Code switching is your parents just walked in the room. You had the slang on while you was chatting with your friends, and now, oh, you know what, Mom? I would like some dinner today. Versus, hey, y'all, you know what? I'm trying to get me something to eat really fast. Let me just, no. What you just heard me do was a version of code switching. But Desi, let's go ahead and give them the professional version. Let me hear it.
So code switching is a linguistic code, or it is a linguistic demonstration of switching the way one speaks and interacts in a social context and in a conversational context. Very often, individuals will code switch in an effort to create a sense of closeness and proximity with whomever they're engaging with, or they will also do it to create a distinction and implement a distance. I personally code switch for various reasons. Why? Because I have a lot of different backgrounds, I have a lot of different identities, and I find myself to be in a lot of different circles. On top of that, I find myself code switching with accents and languages. My friends, my coworkers, my clients, anyone that knows me will probably say, I can code switch about 6 to 7 times in a singular conversation.
Actually, I'm the opposite of you. Sometimes I fail on purpose to code switch because I don't want to necessarily alter my style of speaking in order to suit other people's needs. If anything, I want you to confirm. I want you to conform to my pattern of speech so that way I know that I've dominated that conversation. But before we get into deeper of code switching, why are we here? Why are we doing an episode of code switching?
So, one of the conversations that I've had the fortunate luxury of engaging in is this ongoing narrative of generational gaps. I'm sure that you all have heard it. We talking the Gen Zers, whatever it is that they're doing. We're talking the millennials, whatever it is that they're doing. Oh, the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, the geriatric millennials, right? We're at the tail end of it. And we don't believe in work until you die. We believe in work to fund the lifestyle that you want. So I'm preparing the others with that PTO.
Hey, Desi, do you remember the floppy disk?
I do remember the floppy disk.
We should bring that back, low-key.
That was cool.
I just love the name.
So for those of you that don't know what a floppy disk is, it is what your USB or hard drives were.
Yeah, the floppy disk. Well, actually, there was
the CD. There was a floppy disk,
then the CD.
Yeah. Again, before you all had your iPods, we had our tape cassette players. We had our CD.
I had
players.
a VHS. It's actually right there. I still have it. Anyways,
so I think we
sound
dated
old.
Ourselves.
Code switching. To piggyback off our previous episode, we talked about excellence fatigue and how that could play a role in our daily lives, in our professional lives,
in our relationships.
And in our relationships. Code switching is a part of that fatigue that you feel. You're one way at work, you're one way at home, you're one way in your relationship. And if you're like Desi, who is a certified master in code switching, CMCS, you're a Desi out there. You're probably, by the time 5:30 rolls around, you've code switched maybe 200 times. And sometimes you do it in a second language. Your parents talk to you in one language. Now you're talking to your friends in another. It can become exhausting, but it is just as much a part of who we are and who you are. And it is a necessary survival tool, just as necessary as it would be swimming, because code switching in some aspects can save your life. You know, if you speak the language and, you know, there's strife wherever you are, being able to code switch can be a lifesaver, quite literally. Sometimes being able to code switch can be a tool to demonstrate power and influence. Sometimes, hey, a switch up in tone. I was joking with you 5 seconds ago, but hey, listen, now my tone is shift. Now the atmosphere. And sometimes you can literally feel when someone code switches, because the atmosphere and the vibe can change in a room. People who have mastered that
have mastered life.
I wouldn't even say that. I wouldn't say mastered life, but people who have mastered that, chances are those are your politicians.
No.
Those are your CEO.
The reason that I say that they've mastered life is because they have done a diligent job, or they have been very diligent in their observations. To assess a need.
To assess successfully at that.
To assess a need and implement a correction.
It's essentially, code switching is essentially reading the room.
Reading the room.
Verbal reading the room.
Reading the room, and then also setting the parameters for how you want to engage. It is setting the conditions of how you want people to interact with you.
Sometimes no.
At least for me.
For you, you use it strategically. But what happens when people are talking and engaging in a certain way, and then you enter that space? They've already set the tone. What do you do in that case?
I shift the tone. I have a way of, personally speaking, I have a way of interjecting myself in a conversation that makes it authentic, organic, and inviting.
But that doesn't always work for everybody. So for someone, for the beginner level, like I said, certified code switcher here.
But again, here's the thing. In my experience, I would say that I have code switched to the point where it has become like a second sleeve. It is almost inherently second nature. I don't even notice that I'm doing it. For example, whomever I'm engaging with, I find it that I can attune myself to be able to be receptive to the information that they're sharing with me, and also positioning myself to create and set the conditions for an environment for us to engage and interact.
So how does that speak to the generational gaps specifically?
The generational gap. So I know that if I am speaking to, let's say, for example, my parents, love y'all, but here is the thing. There was a way in which I had initially spoken to them, but as my siblings got older and started influencing our parents, their vernacular has also changed. I can literally see my mom say period, and that's on period, and have it executed perfectly.
You know, I see your vibe. I raise you mine. My mom is straight up Black American, born and raised in America. My dad is Senegalese. Now, growing up, I have had to code switch amongst my parents, like, to appease to their various styles of communication and their sensitivities. Certain things, and this is with anybody, but like certain things that I could get away with saying with my mom, I knew I couldn't get away with saying it to my dad and vice versa. However, as time went on, I'm realizing that both my parents are, even though they're doing it extremely differently, both my parents are, you know, adapting their communication styles. Now, I don't see my mom saying in period. That's just not her. Certain things aren't her. Oh, well, wait a minute. My mom was saying period before it was how we say it. She'll be like,
point blank, period.
Point blank. That's what she'll say.
Yeah.
She won't be like, period. You know what I'm saying? Like, they had their, and you know what's crazy? Older generations gave us the blueprints for some of this current slang, not slang, but some of this current vernaculars that we, and slang, some of it that we have now. They gave the literal blueprints. I know in every African home has some variation of this sound. How even that sound, it went from, in Senegal, men can't do it because it's a feminine trait, to now everybody can do it. Because it's a way to express displeasure. And that has changed in my dad's generation. I heard him make that sound for the first time last year. And he didn't even do it on purpose. In his mind, he was displeased with something, and he did it very subtly, like that. And I was like, and he was like, man, times have changed. That's what he said. He said, man, times have changed. Me, when I was your age, I would never even consider making that sound.
And I'll even continue to engage with you in that frame of reference. For example, again, West African background, multiple identities here. But on the francophone side of the house, we have a lot of like niche nuances that I guess are very cultural specific. But we also do a lot with sounds. My friends, my family, and my coworkers can also attest to this. I can have a whole conversation and just make e-ah-oo-ah-oh sounds. It's like, oh, wow. Like the elongation of words, the chopping of sounds, I think that is also what adds to the flavor of the conversation.
Did you hear my displeasure about your e-ah-oo?
I was letting you know that I know all my vowels. Do you know yours?
Did you? You forgot sometimes why, by the way. Sometimes why.
I guess.
Continue. Go ahead.
So, as I was saying before, I was abruptly interrupted. I can see he's having a lot of fun making that sound, you all. I think that when we choose the way we want to engage and interact with a person, it comes from a place of familiarity. Right? So, when I step into a room and I see someone that is older than me, freestyle that back. Growing up, I never called adults by their first name.
I still don't. Well, I mean, it's like Miss.
It's Miss and Miss. Mr. This, that, because to me, that is a sign of respect. That is a sign of giving them their space. That is a sign of me acknowledging their wisdom and their years. When I was told in my first job that my boss looked at me and said, yeah, call me so-and-so, I said, excuse me? And for like...
It's jarring, isn't it?
It was very jarring.
It gave you cognitive dissonance.
It did. And not only that, but I refused to do it for like 2 months because I was like, this is not, I feel like I'm disrespecting you.
My dad told me one time that it's okay to cuss in front of him. I looked at him like he was crazy. I said, huh? What are you saying? What are you saying to me right now, sir? Me cuss in front of you? I don't cuss in front of my mother. And if I do, it was a straight up accident. It was like, this person cut me off, But my dad gave me full permission to code switch in front of him, and I said I refuse. There's just some things I refuse to partake in. I'm not gonna cuss. I'm not gonna cuss in front of my father on purpose. Now I might slip up and be like, yeah, and such and such was why, and it might come out as I'm chatting, but it will never be an intentional. I'm cussing for emphasis. By the way, speaking of cussing. When code switching, cussing can be an invaluable tool. I'm so serious because take, for instance, Desifer. Very rarely does she cuss, but I know if I hear it, I know it's serious. Okay, no, hold on. Let me lock in. What happened now? Who did this? Why? But take for me, I ain't a sailor, but but I use it as a way to emphasize whatever it is that I'm speaking. So much so that I have brought it into the workplace. So much so to where my coworkers don't even notice it. Again, I'm not exaggerating or I'm not overstepping my boundaries. But in my effort to code switch to the workplace, I bring in some elements of my personality so that the code switch isn't so jarring for me, because that can be exhausting over time. To do that, I've introduced cussing into the workplace. And I dare say that my coworkers have gotten used to it. They're like, okay, at first, cussing was a no-no there. But the way that I even did it in a presentation one time. I'll give you a case in point. In the presentation, we were talking about some of our redacted materials that we weren't able to push to other agencies. I'm saying redacted because I can't give away too much because some of the coworkers listening, I signed an NDA, so I got to be a little bit careful.
Right.
But we were unable to move some of our redacted items. And And I said, some of us in government are fucking up. I said that in the middle of a presentation. And it was jarring because I had violated a boundary, but I had put the emphasis on the problem. In so doing, I made the audience more comfortable with engaging with me because they started clapping. I'm so serious. They started clapping. My coworker, he's a Nigerian guy. He looked at me like his mouth was wide open. But when the audience reacted, he was like, he started nodding his head. He's like, oh, okay, this guy, he's different. I might not assign him the presentation next time, but he's different. And right there, I commanded respect through my use of cussing. Okay. Right there, because it showed that I was intentional, that I was honest, that I didn't mince words, and that I was direct. And I commanded everybody's attention in that one moment.
I'll raise you a similar situation.
Are we having a comms off?
It's not. So anyone that knows me, I do not have any inkling in me to intentionally be funny. I don't.
Stop it.
I don't. It's not like I walk in and I'm like, and I'm going to make everybody laugh.
But go ahead, tell your story.
Right. So I remember walking into a meeting. So I was working on a particular project. One of the stakeholders is this, gentleman that everyone's like scared of. And they're like, yeah, like every time you have to mentally prepare yourself to meet with this person. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I walk into his office and I notice he has a particular team's stuff.
A particular what?
Sports team. He has a banner of a particular sports team.
And let me guess, Dallas Cowboys.
I'm not going to say what team it was.
If it is,
I'm not going to say
F the Cowboys.
However, I was like, oh, sir, I know today must be a very hard day for you.
Oh, you're sick.
Before we get started.
Had to be the Cowboys. Had to be.
Again, I'm not saying yay or nay. So I was like, so, sir, first of all, I want to present my deepest empathy. I know that it's a hard day to be you and to be a true lover of XYZ team.
You know what? If you said this to me, I would have had you so fired.
No, but listen. And I was saying it chummingly, and he couldn't help but crack a smile. He was like, yeah, nah, but we'll go get him next time. I was like, yeah, for sure. You know, there's hope there. And then he was like, okay, and who are you again? And I was like, oh, by the way, I'm so-and-so and so-and-so. So all of a sudden, this man that I walked in looking very stoic, very serious, very like, he could probably pick rice grains out of a bag meticulously. No, that's how poised he was smiling at me and asking me about XYZ sport. But I knew that they had lost the game the day before. So that's what I was running with.
And where did you, for the audience, for the sake of clarity, where do you think you code switched at in that exchange?
I think I switched when I realized that I need to make him comfortable, right? Because I think that sometimes first impressions are like the initial reaction to XYZ, but if I don't know you, I don't know how much I'm supposed to give you because I don't know if I can trust you, right? And then the other aspect of that is I have this persona or this air about me so that people take me a certain way. Their perception and their understanding of my reputation or of my thoughts in XYZ and the way I present myself has to be properly curated. So with him, I realized, okay, this is a family man. This is a sportsman. This is a well-traveled man. I want to create some level of common ground. I want to establish a layer of comfort for the both of us. And the quickest thing that came to mind was that game.
You use code switching as a way to establish comfort and possibly shift perceptions. Is that what I'm getting?
Shift perceptions, establish comfort, and tap into cultural values.
Sometimes the perception of code switching can also be influenced by broader societal attitudes towards bilingualism and multilingualism, right? You're a polyglot yourself. And I'm sure that when you're upset, you switch into French mode. Probably. Tell me what that's like. I do the same thing, actually, but my base language is English.
Right.
But if I'm upset, what is lately I've been switching into French. But tell me, what's that like from your perspective? Because your base language is actually French.
Correct. So I just feel like English doesn't give me enough anger or frustration to express myself. So I immediately go to default.
You revert.
I revert.
In my case, I run out of things to say in English that I change to French. I lack the patience to give you a chance to respond. So I keep going. And then once I've exhausted all of my frustrations in English, I explode in French.
Yep.
It's like another firework of say.
And then and I'll also say again, but for me, French is not just a frustration tone. It is also an excitement tone.
Yes.
Any heightened emotion, because again, I'm reverting back to whatever is my default or my comfort space. So it's kind of like when you go to a store or a restaurant or something. I am a notorious ear hustler. I don't mean to do it on purpose. My ear just does it.
Your ear hustler badge is on purple. You are legendary.
Yeah. But I will hear somebody say something, and then I may even find myself in the conversation, depending on what is being discussed. It is also something that when older people or older generations see younger people speaking the language or understanding the competency, it's one of those things that's like, wow.
Look at this young buck.
No,
look at this
like,
young
wow,
fella.
Like, I'm proud of you. Or wow, like that's so great. Case in point, my sisters and I went back home. One of our homes is Togo, West Africa, 2 summers ago. And there were, again, we've grown up here. I mean, I was born Ivory Coast, West Africa. My siblings were born here, though. And so the relatives thought that we might not necessarily have mastery or understanding of the language. They were shocked to find out not only did we have mastery and understanding of the language, but we also had the right cadences and the accent to match.
But that's not code switching, though.
No, it is, because even accents, the way someone, when you hear someone from Florida speak, when you hear someone from New York speak, we're all speaking English, right? However, there are nuances to that English. It is geographically informed. It is culturally informed.
Perhaps the best example of this is AAVE, African American Vernacular English. Like if I were to say, and right? That's cap.
That's cap.
Your Honor, that's cap.
Your Honor, that's Gen Z right there. Or you a lie.
You's a lie, your mama dress you funny.
Sorry to that man. Don't let your mom dress you again. But you see, there's like certain things where we didn't even.
Or dead ass.
Oh, dead ass was a really they use. I think it's dead now.
Dead ass. I still use dead ass.
I think we use it, but I don't think the younger generation uses it.
What do they use?
Kill.
Like kill Mo?
Yeah.
I'm upset. Y'all kill me, bro. Kill is nasty. That's absolutely abysmal. And I am tired of some of these words y'all are using. Let's bring it back to
the older generation will probably say Holmes. Go look it up. It was really popular.
Where do I go to look that up? where would I search the time Holmes was used from 1950 to 2000? Where would I go to look that up exactly?
Yeah, I was like, who is Holmes?
Holmes Skillet Biscuit. Okay,
yeah,
I see.
Holmes.
Yeah,
that's and then we took it and made it homey.
Being crib is probably the most creative one.
Ooh,
I love ops.
Escape the day.
Escape the day, yeah.
I like that.
I like ops.
No, everybody uses ops. Ops is forever.
That's us though. Who are the folks above us?
The real millennials.
I'm saying ops is AAVE. That's what I'm saying.
Oh no, yeah, duh.
Oh, thank you. That's what I was saying. Ops doesn't necessarily mean police. It could just mean people who
are against you.
But it also means police.
Correct. But also, I'm even thinking about the way we
short for opposition, by the way. For those of you who are like, what the fuck are they saying, bro? They're not speaking English. Ops is short for opposition. Like how Riz was short for charisma. I want to hijack the conversation.
Take it.
Code switching as a negative, quote unquote, talking white.
You know,
how many times have you heard that, Desi?
I'd be a millionaire, billionaire, gazillionaire.
You know how many times I've heard that? Especially with somebody with my name. At least with your name, if you look Desiree, maybe not the Anani part, but if you just look at Desiree on a piece of paper, you could be black or white, right?
Maybe.
Okay. You look at my name. Yeah, no, that's an African. A booty scratcher, if you would.
I'm dead. You didn't have to say that.
That's what they used to call me.
Okay, but
couldn't believe it.
Given again, my first name is Arella, right?
Mhm.
So Arella, I mean, the number of times I've heard it mispronounced, even though it's literally written phonetically, you just gotta say
They messed my name up, and my name is literally how it looks is how it's spelled and how it sounds.
Correct.
But talking white.
Again, talking white. What does that look like? What does that sound like? Or why is that the standard of speech when someone is speaking quote unquote properly, right?
There is no such thing as proper speech.
Exactly why I said quote unquote.
Right.
Because who determines the social structure? Who determines the norm?
So, and here's another thing. Shakespearean language in its day was considered slang. Some of the words that Shakespeare chose for some of his lower tiered characters, and by lower tier I mean like lower caste, like a peasant sort of type character. Even though it's thou, they, and is this a dagger of which I see before me? Even some of that. Oh, I'm going back to my Shakespearean bag. I too was a theater kid. Some of the things that they said back in Shakespearean plays, some of that was slang that Shakespeare used. So if the thou days and fee fi fo thumbs was slang, and we look at that as quote unquote proper English, or at the very least old English, right? Who is to say that Riz isn't proper? Who is to say that Kill Mo isn't proper?
Kill Mo is crazy.
And in fact,
we all know Kill Mo not proper. Don't do that.
But hold on. If you use that sort of phrasing in a context where it is in the same context of which it thrives in, but you use it improperly, you lose the meaning of whatever it is you were trying to get across. So when you code switch, right? And sometimes we do it intentionally to meet people where they're at. Sometimes we refuse to do it. In my case, you meet me where I'm at. But when we opt to do it strategically, it can give us an extra layer of meaning that would otherwise not be there had we lacked the language to do so in the first place. So even slang, phonics, AAVE, whatever it is that you want to call it, is in fact proper English if it has a clear, concise meaning to it, even if it means multiple things. My favorite is John. It's a Philly slang word. John stands for several things. It could be an item, a place, a thing. It could be a woman. That's a bad John right there. Or it could be a situation. That's a bad John. But I could be referring to a woman or a situation depending on what was said prior, or what I'm referring to in the context of that particular conversation. So what we know about code switching is it can be used naturally and it can be used strategically, either to emphasize a point or to even disprove points as necessary depending on the user. And when we're bridging generational gaps, and we're choosing to code switch or not having this or thinking about it like this as a more strategic tool for you to use in your belt, can bring you much further when identifying and getting to know areas of relationships that can be improved with your peers, your coworkers, your loved ones, everyone. And if you meet somebody who refuses to code switch, then perhaps your code switching should also not change. And then you can see which one of you will fold first.
When we're talking about creating bridges, when we're talking about common ground, when we're talking about spaces for relation, for engagement, for interaction, the opportunity cost.
Okay, Economics 101.
Listen, we're going to talk to you all about being financially irresponsible later, but that's, stay tuned to that. That being said, back to the original point. What do you lose when you refuse to adapt or assimilate? And what do you gain by speaking the language that is spoken?
I am a huge proponent for strategic code switching. Huge proponent of that. And you absolutely should. If you in the hood and everybody's talking a certain way,
Why you want to look like you stand out?
If you in corporate America and everybody's talking a certain way,
Well, yes, I completely understand, and we will have that filed to you expeditiously.
if you at home and the parents and they talking a certain way,
Mommy, I understand what you're saying.
and look how you switch the tone. Expert code switcher. Look how you switch the tone.
No.
You in a romantic relationship? What you saying to your man? Go ahead.
Daddy, listen.
Oh,
So, to recap, snapshot, today we were talking about the multifaceted dynamics of communicating within generations, right? And looking at code switching from a perspective of language, identity, and even culture. We talked about how various factors influence the way that we speak, whether it be our geographical backgrounds, our cultural backgrounds, or even just our attitudes towards language. Some people love to explore and play around with their words, and others want to be bare basic. That's for you to decide. So we hope that you have learned something about the way that you can strategically use communication to be a great asset to your toolbox.
Never compromise in your effort to strategically code switch. Do not compromise who you are. If you're someone who quote unquote talks white, hey man, who are you to say that talking white is wrong? Go ahead, keep talking white. I support it. If you're someone, you refuse appeal to the corporate America jargon, I can't promise that you'll go far in corporate America, but what I can promise, people will remember you. So be steadfast in who you are and always communicate strategically no matter where you are. If you're talking to the police, yes, sir. No, especially if you're black. Yes, sir. No, sir. Keep it pushing. If you're talking to your mom and dad, however it is you talk to them, you're talking to your significant other. Yes, babe. No, babe. Listen, sweetheart, get it together. Listen, sir.
Nah, Daddy, I didn't really like when you did that. So turn that back.
And see, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar.
Ooh.
Strategically code switch, and that is touching the stove.
Thank you all so much for listening. We've been seeing the engagement, the messages, the questions, so keep it coming. Like we said, we are very big on interaction and engagement and community. We have a TTS tribe going over here, so Touching the Stove tribe. That was definitely all Desi's doing, because y'all know I love the alliterations. But yes, thank you so much for tuning in, and that is Touching the Stove.